All right, guys, so the weather was a little bit nicer this weekend than the previous weekends we've had so far this year, and so you knew things were going to get ugly in the streets, and they did. We had 30 people shot, 6 people killed, okay, and at the beginning of the weekend, there was a house party. I just want to talk about this real quick, and then I'm going to get to some of these high-profile murders that have just been solved, both in the city and the suburbs. So there was a shooting at a house party over on Division in Kedzie. At the start of the weekend over on the west side, and this is a neighborhood which I believe is controlled by the Latin Kings. I know they're over at Spalding, like Division in Spalding, and I think they got the block over at Kedzie too. Just be advised, guys, that's an extremely violent area, man. There's I believe Sellers Kings, okay, then you got, I think, Pachucos, Jivers, Vice Lords, Royals, I think Insane Unknowns are over there too, and I think Cobras are somewhere around there too. That's like the border between like the Hispanic and the black part of the west side, okay? And it gets really bad over there, man. That's an area where like they'll check anybody who comes to the neighborhood, and if you're not like known by them, they might just shoot you. You know what I'm saying? I remember a couple years ago there was 2 Latin Kings. Some dude came riding with his bike. I think he was a neutron, like not even a gangbanger. He came riding his bike down westbound down Division from Kedzie to Spalding. And they checked him. They're like, they threw up their signs, asked him where he was from. He didn't say nothing, and they just shot him and killed him. You know what I'm saying? So just be advised, like that's a very hot area. It looks kind of nice, okay, especially as you go east. You know what I'm saying? Humboldt Park is starting to be gentrified in the eastern part, but after you get past Western, it gets kind of iffy, okay, especially after you get past California and then out to Kedzie, okay, you're in kind of a war zone, all right? Just be advised, guys. And there was one shooting over on Lakeshore Drive, on the north side of Lakeshore Drive, in like the 800 block of North Lakeshore Drive, and you guys know Lakeshore Drive has been like a shooting range for the Northside gangs, you know what I'm saying, all those guys. So I'm going to try and find out who that was, but I haven't been able to find out yet. Like, PBG, Loke City, Hula Gang, all of them have been doing shootings over on Lakeshore Drive. So, and you guys know some guys have actually been killed from those gangs on Lakeshore Drive. Lakeshore Drive is the expressway, I mean not expressway, it's like a semi-expressway. Speed limit's like 45 that runs along the lake, like almost the entire length of the city of Chicago. It's been relatively safe compared especially to the Dan Ryan and to the Eisenhower. The Eisenhower is the big like shooting gallery, man. That's where the West Side gangs do all their like trying to catch ops. They do it on the expressway because it's like easy to get away, and there's no street cameras, so a lot of gangs do shootings on the expressway now. But Lakeshore Drive has been the North Side gangs' expressway of choice for shootings. There was somebody shot by the Red Line over on 63rd. I think that was just a personal beef. And then there was also a 5-year-old shot in a shooting which I believed involved Chicago police, but I haven't gotten any details on that yet. The papers didn't have too many details on these shootings. But I want to talk about some high-profile murders like that were in the news big time years ago, okay, that have finally been solved. And the lesson to learn from all this, guys, you know how they say the money is, or the love of money is one of the roots of all evils? You guys, you can add to that list pussy. I mean, pussy makes people just go out here and do some psycho, savage stuff, man. I mean, man, like, if you talk about the stuff that causes beef out here, pussy is probably, like, right next after money. So, there was a murder solved, which is like a 33-year-old murder, okay? There was a girl. She was 15 years old. She lived out in the suburbs of Chicago, okay, I think by Glen Ellen. And she was found dead in a field. It was in 1985, okay, and it was a big deal because, nobody knew who had killed her. Everybody's freaking out. Is there a serial killer in the area? Like, what's going on? She obviously wasn't carrying stacks of cash, so why did he kill her? And it was like an assault situation, okay, and people were wondering who did this. And finally, 33 years after the fact, the cops have finally solved the murder. And this is one of those things, guys. There's no statute of limitations on murder. All you guys who are out here doing these hits, they could come knocking on your door 40 years later. I mean, think about that, man. This is something you're going to have to live with over your head for the rest of your life. So the name of the killer who they got is Michael Jones. Mike Jones, not that Mike Jones. It's definitely a different Mike Jones. He admitted to assaulting and killing Christy Wesselman near her home in the burbs. She had been on her way to the grocery store back in 1985 when he found her and assaulted her and killed her. He's been eluding capture ever since, okay, and they finally got him, and the judge is going to enter a sentence of 80 years after his guilty plea, okay, so that's going to be the rest of his life. He'll never see freedom again. Thankfully, that case is brought to a close. Hopefully, her family can have some closure on that. But another guy, this is a story that I did a video on. This is just an update on this case. So there was an Illinois grad student who had allegedly assaulted and killed a Chinese international student. She was 26 years old. I'm not sure, I'm definitely not going to pronounce her name right. Yingying Zhang, I think is how you pronounce her name. She was from Nanping, China. She was here studying at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, okay, and then she had disappeared. Her body has never been found. It still has not been found, which surprised me as to why that this guy would confess to this, because he did confess. Okay, and this guy apparently was out here doing this like for pussy. I mean, he actually like, I don't know, he tried to get in her pants, she wasn't going, and then he decided to just like kidnap her, assault her, and kill her. Federal prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. He was actually a University of Illinois PhD candidate, and he's accused of kidnapping, torturing, and killing this Yingying Zhang woman who was a visiting scholar from Nanping, China. Again, her body still has not been found, so I don't know like what exactly his legal counsel is telling him, because with no body, apparently, you know, as soon as the cops scooped him up, he said, you know, he confessed to everything. Which is kind of weird that they would seek the death penalty with no body, because, you know, sometimes, as crazy as this sounds, guys do claim bodies that they didn't kill. I remember with that JonBenet Ramsey, especially when it's a high-profile murder. I remember with that little girl, JonBenet Ramsey, some guy confessed to her murder, and then he was like telling the cops about how he did it, and like the things that he was telling the cops didn't match the physical evidence that they had, and so they investigated it and found that he was actually in a different place while she got killed, and they found out that he was doing the whole thing just for clout. He wanted to be known as like he just wanted to like go down in history as like a great serial killer. And he confessed to killing this chick, and he didn't even do it. And ladies got to be extra careful, man. I mean, man, if I was a dad of a daughter, I'd be paranoid, because a lot of these dudes are, you know, just out here on some psycho stuff or some pussy, and they end up doing just like demonic crap. So it's a federal crime, I believe, because she's an international student, so they can seek the death penalty. In Illinois, there's no death penalty, but, you know, at the federal level, they can seek that. Okay, now, another person who just pled guilty. This trial is just about to start. You guys remember Andia Martin? Okay, I did a story on this. She was the 14-year-old girl, okay, who was killed by another teenage chick, whose name I can't say because she's a minor. It's not even being published in the papers. But she was killed by another teenage chick over a boy, okay? And I believe the whole, like, beef started on Facebook, okay? And the gun that the other girl used to kill this chick was provided to her by her uncle. Now, her uncle has already been sentenced, I believe, for like a really long time, like 100 years or something like that. But this girl now has pled guilty over this. This took place in the Back of the Yards neighborhood on the south side, and the trial is going to begin this week. But the guilty plea just came a few days ago, so not sure exactly what kind of sentence they're going to recommend for this girl. But yeah, man, I mean, when I say that, you know, stuff happens over pussy, I mean that happens over dick too. I mean, the opposite is true. Not as common, but the opposite is definitely true. And guys, man, I mean, it's just not worth it, man. Like, I mean, there's plenty of fish in the sea on both ends. Plenty of fish in the sea, man. No need to take somebody's life or go crazy over one person. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. But people's passions, people's emotions, take control of them and just basically use them like a puppet. All right, now this happened actually last week. I'm catching up on this story, but you guys know one of the biggest places where the Sinaloa cartel is functioning in Chicago. They're responsible for 80% of the hard dope that comes into this city. And the highest ranking member, this happened out in California, the highest ranking member of a Mexican cartel ever to surrender to U.S. authorities has pled guilty to drug smuggling charges, acknowledging that he orchestrated the shipments of thousands of pounds of methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin to the United States. This was out in San Diego. Damasco Lopez Serrano entered his plea last Wednesday in federal court in San Diego nearly 6 months after turning himself over to U.S. authorities at California's border with Mexico. He's the highest ranking Mexican cartel leader to do so. His father, Damaso Lopez Nunez, was arrested in Mexico City in May and had been battling for control of the Sinaloa cartel following the 2016 arrest of billionaire kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. So this guy apparently, his dad was trying to become the new man. Okay, but here's the thing, like, the man behind El Chapo, like the guy who was really in charge, was this guy Ismael Zambada, who they call El Mayo. And he's probably still at the top. Haven't heard anything about him. He kind of stays in the shadows and behind the scenes, so like people don't really know what he's doing. Okay, but this guy apparently was, this guy Damaso Lopez Nunez was apparently vying for control of the Sinaloa cartel to take El Chapo's position. And Mexican officials have blamed Lopez Nunez for instigating violence in the Pacific coast state of Sinaloa and the peninsula of Baja California, including a striking string of killings around Cabo San Lucas. Now, U.S. authorities are seeking Lopez Nunez's extradition, and Guzman was sent to the United States last year to face drug charges. Lopez Serrano, who has been described as violent and flashy by Mexican experts, acknowledged in federal court that he had a leadership role in the cartel. He also said that he was armed while trafficking drugs and pled guilty to drug smuggling charges out of a separate case in Virginia that also named his father. He faces a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in prison and has agreed to forfeit $1 million in cash. The case is part of a 5-year investigation that's resulted in charges against more than 125 people, the seizure of thousands of tons of drugs and more than $27 million in drug proceeds. U.S. officials said the probe has shed light on the inner workings of one of the world's most powerful drug cartels. And so, I mean, this is probably going to do nothing. I mean, they just replace one guy with another guy. But the war on drugs goes on, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. My personal opinion on this war on drugs thing is that these resources could be spent way better, again, on the demand side, trying to get people not to want drugs, than trying to stop the people from selling drugs. Because I'm telling you, where there's a will, there's a way. And there's definitely a will where there's that much cash. You know, there's just too much money involved in this stuff, man. So be safe out there, guys. It's your boy, Chicago World News. I'm out.